everyone, welcome again to PomTalk. We're going to talk about orienteering technique, specifically analyse it going through my orienteering on Mt Korong. We'll be looking for three things. We'll be looking for lines of terrain. We'll be looking for small features out of control, and we'll be looking at uncertainty. So lines of terrain range from things like paths and fences to the more difficult things like contour lines or tiers of rock, and those last two being quite important on Korong because it's a granite area, and the granite in Australia tends to form lines, and once you're on a line it's very, very easy to follow, far easier to follow a line than a series of points, and far faster. So that's why we're looking for lines in the terrain. We're looking for small features out of the control so that we get going in the right direction straight away, and it helps give your brain a really good sense of perspective. If you know that the control is in a certain direction, it'll be easier for you to maintain that direction when faced with obstacles in the terrain that aren't on the map, like fallen trees or denser vegetation, things like that. And we'll be looking at uncertainty. So when you're off a line in the terrain, you'll become uncertain and start to question whether you're in the right place or going in the right direction, and that will slow you down. So we're going to look at sort of where that occurs and maybe trying to recognize it in your own orienteering so that you can come up with maybe a strategy to minimize it. Unfortunately, it is unavoidable. You will be uncertain at some times, but obviously being uncertain less is better for you. So what we've got is we've got my head cam footage, we've got my quick route things, and we've got a photo of me in the studio. So quick route is a program that combines a GPS track or trace with an orienteering map, as you can see here. So what I did is I downloaded Quick Route, it's free software, followed the instructions, put my GPS track in, and then we've got this as the output. So this is the course. If I just zoom out a little bit, there we go. So we've got quite a short course. Let's have a look. 3.7 kilometers, 20 controls. No tapes out in the forest, so a little bit uncertain. Checking the locations of some of them. Up on the left here, we've got the pace graphs. So green is currently set at 4 minutes a kilometre and red is set at 7 minutes a kilometre. So you can see on the trace, this is the trace here, when my speed changes. So red, slow at the start, yellow, building up speed, green, yellow into that first control. And obviously it changes round. So initially looking at speed can give you a good idea of maybe where you stopped if you hadn't realised you stopped. If you've got lots of little red patches, so that can indicate you're slowing down, and maybe is the cause of. So sometimes if you do a control and then you get your GPS trace and look at it again, you can often see that you slowed down on the GPS when you didn't think you slowed down in the real world. And that can be a good way of starting to think about what causes you to slow down. So on here we've got, what else? I've put the control circles in. So these are these smaller red circles typically inside the control. We're going to blame GPS error for number 2, but yeah, all the other ones are alright. And those split times come up on the right hand side of the program, and they give you a time, so classic split time, and they give you this straight thing and your route. So the straight line is the distance between the two splits, sort of under the red line, and then your route is how long you actually took to do that route. So you can see straight 197 meters for the first one, and I ran 206 meters. So not much extra distance on that one. 4.2% says. And two interesting things at the end. You've got your control leaving time and your control approaching time. So that's how far in 45 meters. How long did it take me to cover those 45 meters leaving the start? It took me 18 seconds. And how long did it take me to get into number 1? 14 seconds. So if you can, maybe you'll start seeing patterns with taking less time coming in or leaving a control. So that's what we're going to look at. Let's get started with the head cam. I'll just explain a little bit about the head cam. If we just pause it. There we go. So put the head cam on and combined it with my GPS track. So you effectively see it, you're seeing what I'm seeing, pretty much. Key things to look for are when I'm reading the map, which typically shows up on the head cam with it looking slightly down and swinging a little bit more left to right, but we have stabilized it to help you guys at home with your motion sickness. But yeah, if you're still looking, we'll pick it up, but looking down and swinging left to right as you would expect with reading a map. On the left hand side we've got the quick route file as well, orientated along the leg, and on the right hand side we've got it again, but that one will spin based on what direction I'm facing. And then down in the bottom right, got a time for how long I've been running, distance to the control, pace graph for my average pace. I believe it's over the last 20 seconds, and some little other things, altitude, and there would be space for a heart rate data thing, but I wasn't wearing my heart rate monitor. So if we could go back to the start of the video. Okay. So we're going off. So I stopped at I picked up the map and I looked at the map and I looked for a small feature to get me going on the way to number 1, which were those 2 boulders directly under the line, which we'll see going past just on the left there. Having a bit of a look around. And then I saw this tier of rock appearing, which is the stony ground in the light green, and I decided I want to go on the left hand side of that because I thought it would be slow running. So I picked that out in the terrain. Bit of a look. Trying to run on the edge of it, because that you run down there and then the control's on a boulder on the left hand side. Running along the edge of that. Here we go, there's the boulder appearing. So, into the boulder, punch the control, look at the map, looking for a feature to get out. Is look up, there it is, those big cliffs, really obvious. Want to run on the left hand side of the first one, because that takes me out in the right direction. There's then the next big obstacle there, run around the right hand side of that, use that as the line feature, come across at 90 degrees off the top of that, we'll see, and down slightly left, down a contour line and into the detail. So you see me come through. Not quite, wasn't quite as clear as I was expecting. So I had to do a little bit of a think here. But I realised that this was the cliff. Go down the cliff, and then it was boulder on the left. A little bit uncertain here, lots of other rocks around, but I punched that one. Long look at the map, just to double check everything. And then we're off. We're looking for the next feature. So I knew I wanted to come out about on the same height into the area, and then there are these little patches of rocky ground in green, which I thought would be difficult. So I had a little stop again to try and work out exactly what I wanted and what direction I was going to go out. So kept on the same height, looking to drop away a fraction, and then between that rocky ground on the left, you can see there, and the rocky ground on the right there. And those two, that points me basically straight at the control. So you can see once I've worked it out, very fast into the control. There we go, punch, right. Stop, check, looking for that feature. We're looking for that little patch of green and stony ground. We want to go on the right hand side of that. Follow that round, and I know that I'm looking into the second re-entrant, or second gully, sorry. So there's number one, just need to cross over that to get into gully number two. There we go. Turn around. So the gully gives me my exit direction again. Come out, and you probably won't be able to see it on the head cam, but you could see quite a far way into the distance, and you could see that big rock. That we're coming up to. There it is. So using that as a sort of secondary feature, and then we've got this sort of tier of rock to climb through. Climb through here. Bit uncertain again here, actually. Probably not using quite enough features to be certain about what I was doing. Just had a bit of a stop. Wasn't exactly sure which of these rocky things was going to be the cliff, and eventually looked up and decided that I wasn't close enough to the stream and the cliff behind it, and that I needed to push on just a little bit. So pick this. Okay, so stop, look up at the stream. I want to go on the right hand side of that. So that's got my first feature, that's got my brain in perspective. Cut across, slightly uphill, looking for the next band of rocks that will come up. There they are appearing. Just a little swing around to have a check what was going on. Up along the side of using that tier as a line around that side. I was a little bit uncertain exactly where the boulder was going to be in relation to that line, so I had to have a little stop just to check what was going on. And then there we go. Get it. Now short leg, key to get going in the right direction again. I can see those big rocks that I wanted to be on the other side of. So use them, clambered through. It's the last one. And then straight, slightly down out of there into the gully. Boom. Control. Right, same height coming out. Looking for those lines, so we've got a line of rocks on the left of us to use. So flick back from that line on the left to the line on the right. And those are all pointing us at the control. So you see, running on that line gets me up to pretty decent speed. There's the rocks on the right. So map read there, checking them. Another map read now, working out what's coming up. But my brain's got so much, had so much positive feedback of following those lines that it sort of doesn't quite matter now that I'm not using anything for a bit. Come in round the depression, the pit, selecting the circle. There we go. There's the boulder. So head up and looking for the next line. I decided to use that gully that's on the right of the line. Didn't have to go into the gully to use it, just had to be aware of where it was. So ran out a little bit right. There we go, having a little glance there for that gully, and then judging the distance off that to work out whereabouts I needed to be. And then you could read, then I was reading the features in, so working out I'm going between those two boulders and then climbing up this cliff. So I knew it was coming up, that it's sort of the next rock I was looking for, but as you can see there's quite a bit of rock about. So I had a little bit of a think here of which rock it was going to be on the map. So I think what we'll do is we'll pause it when I find 9. And just have it go back onto the quick route, and then we'll have a just a really quick summary of what we've done so far. So yeah, I was having a little debate with Peter about which one it was. Right. Yeah, let's pause it now. There we go. Right, so on to quick route. Here we go. There we are. So hopefully you'll be able to see my mouse moving around. So these two boulders here. If I take it onto this one, there we go. So these two boulders here, they're the initial point of contact. You see they're right under the line. Then we've got this tier here in the green and round the left hand side of that. So you know once you get on this tier that it's just down on the left, so there's no problem with that control. The risk is going straight at it. Maybe you'd need to pick up this cliff feature here, but you still got you've got risk there. And if you can avoid risk, because people lose most of their time in orienteering through mistakes, so you want to minimize your exposure to mistakes by doing less risky things. Lines are good, unrisky things to follow. So 1 to 2, there was that cliff feature, left hand side of that, up, using the black thing there, as the next line, and then coming down into the control. So the lines are very, very good for getting you between controls, but then coming in, you need to do a bit more point feature identification. So quite hard to use a line straight into 2. You've got to do a bit of that navigation on these features. So 3, out on the same height there, and then coming through the tier here and the tier there, and that goes straight across. So you use those two, while they're not a line in themselves, running between them with where you've come from creates a line that points you straight at number 3. 4, round the green blob to the right. 5, provided you come out of 4 in the right direction, using those gullies, then that will get you going across this maybe slightly confusing, slightly semi-open vague area. And once you pick up that boulder, then you know that you've run on the right direction for that length of time, and you need to push on again. And then, yeah, navigating into that control, I would say. Yep, 6. Using that first point of contact, and then we're almost following the contour line as the line to start with, keeping it the same height, looking up, looking ahead for these stony ground bits that were sort of greener than everything else around that side. Straight through on 7, navigation, and then, as you saw, speeding up on 8, coming out at the same height, following this rock tier along, jumping from that tier to the next band, wanting that close to me on my right hand side, and then pushing up again in the same direction. And then, yeah, navigating up towards 9. When there's a lot of detail on the map, it's a lot harder to identify what the lines are, and also potentially a lot harder to follow them. So I thought the strategy I used of going out into the gully allowed me to be faster on 9 than, say, because there's quite a lot of rock there, maybe doing point navigation between the different rocks would have been potentially confusing as well as slow, and you'd be at risk of parallel errors. But yeah, just using the gully made it very simple. And then once you know you're in the right area, then you can do your feature recognition. So I'm just sorting a few things out here. So we're going to go on to the next couple of controls. We'll do 10, 11, 12, 13 for the next section. And yeah, we're looking for those things again. So here we go. Oh, we're back at the start. We'll just skip through to around 9:46. Yeah. So we've run a little bit out of 9, pushing onwards towards 10. As always, so I've caught Peter up in the terrain, and maybe a little bit of pressure not to go the same way as him, because we're training, which is never a good excuse, but this is my excuse for going over the top here when potentially it's easier and safer just to run around either on the right or on the left, probably on the right, below the rocks, rather than running straight through them. But it's quite cool to hop through the rocks, I think, and there was a wallaby there enjoying himself. There we go, spotted him. But yeah, I knew that I push on kind of going in that straight direction and then glance over to the right for that cliff to be sure that I've gone out of the rocks in the right place, cross over the creek, turn left, pick out the right rock. So the reason I went a bit further right was to avoid the slightly slower runnability, and then we're coming to 10, and then we've got 11, which is my mistake. So we can actually pause it. Yeah, I made a mistake on this control. Proper mistake rather than time loss. So what I was looking for is I thought that I could use the cliffs above the control as a way in. Should we go on, let's go on quick route actually, let's get that up. So I'm looking at these cliffs here, sort of that kind of line of them, with specifically these two telling me the location of the control, and I thought that seeing as they're high above me, that they'd be easy to see, and it'd make it really easy to get into 11, because you go, provided you're looking in the right direction out from 10, you just see them up on the hill in front of you and you go, those are the right ones, control's just there. So if you know where you're going, there's no way you can make a mistake between there and the point. However, those controls were not as obvious, those cliffs, sorry, not as obvious as I thought they were going to be. And the problem is I didn't go to a plan B. I went ahead with waiting for plan A to work out, if that makes sense. So continuing in that direction and just waiting for the cliffs to become obvious, which led to uncertainty and a mistake. So what I should have maybe done is use this creek on the left, and then you could see this gully coming up. We've got a question. Ah, yes. The watercourse here is a very good line feature, because I know that I've been across it on the way to 9 to 10, so that it therefore is there, and I'm going to be able to follow it. So that's a good line feature. That line points you onto the gully here, and then you can go up. You go up the gully, and there's the boulder. So I guess what I was trying to do is the shortcut, which is I'll see this, work out where the control is. And the problem is when that was not obvious, I didn't make a decision to do something else. So it would have been fine if I'd gone, okay, those are not obvious, I'm going to sit on my compass and run hard in the right direction. That would have been good. Or I could go, right, those aren't obvious, what's the other line feature I can use? Creek, gully. So let's see what happened. $11, there we go, that's good. So we go, map reading, out, having a look, glancing up at those cliffs. Map reading again, little glance as well. And now we've got map reading again. And then there's going to be no map reading basically appearing for quite a long period of time. And you could argue that that's because well, really nothing's changed. I know that those things aren't visible. I just need to keep going, but it's just a little, maybe a fraction unsettling that I now have come through some rocks, and I'm not sure whether those rocks are on the map or aren't. So I need to now work it out, and I could be, in theory, anywhere on that side. So what we're seeing is now looking around, and we're still looking for those cliffs. Pushing up, and there we go. Worked out where those cliffs are, and now I can head for those boulders. And if we pause it when I get to the boulders, it should be, there we go, bam. I'm going to flick to quick route again. So from this point here, where the red dot is, I've gone completely in the wrong direction and then across. So I was at the that point at 12:29, and then at the control at 13:07. So it took me approximately 40 seconds. 40 seconds to do that distance. Whereas really, if you're looking at that distance, what's that, a finger width? You know, it should be taking me 20, maybe 15 seconds. So there we go. 30 seconds gone. Just by being careless, I think. Not identifying the problem of. So the plan was those things are visible, and when they weren't, there wasn't an expectation of what to do next. So that's something I need to work on, is when because of the way I like to do my orienteering, which is kind of deciding on a set of features or lines to use, then I need to come up with a better plan. But now that I've identified that as a problem, I can work on it. I've never realised that that's a problem before, so I've never been out there when I've been training and never been looking for that as an idea. I think we've got another question come in. Why are you being careless? Warren from Q has sent in, why are you being careless? I guess what you'd say is that potentially I've been a bit distracted by seeing another competitor in the forest, and it's messed with my my focus, I think. So I'm having to concentrate on finding lines and following them, and finding small features and following them, and having that potentially unexpected distraction has made me lose my focus. So that's a lesson again, that when I see people, I need to accept that I'm now potentially running with someone, and then work hard again on focusing on the goals that I've set myself for the session or the race. So the goals were good thumbing of the map, and using tiers of rock or line features in the terrain and small features after the control. So I think that's why I was being careless. So we'll go back to the head cam for the next two. Very unprofessional. very unprofessional. It's all of my fans just wanting to hear more. Right, on the way to 12. So you see that's sort of similar height. There are those rocks there, very visible. Go around the right hand side of them. Come in to the next sort of tier and looking on the left hand side of this tier. Having a few problems, I guess, working out exactly where in the circle control is going to be. So as you see, Peter comes past me here. So we're both having a little think about exactly which boulder we want. Right, there we go, got it. So up, you see the rocks under the line, they're the line feature. Get on the left hand side of them. Up there. Now we're looking for the next feature, so just wanting to continue straight, and you've got those two boulders in front. So we go press on from the line we've been given out of the control. That takes us straight through into this open area. Here we go, boulders coming up. Get those two boulders. Gully starts to appear. Looking on the left hand side of the gully. Looking for the brown dot. Which unfortunately wasn't quite the picture of what I perceived the brown dot to look like. Wasn't quite as it appeared in the terrain, so I had a little bit of a stop and a think about what it is. But there we go, got it. We'll press on. We've got a long leg coming up. So there we go. There's the long leg up on the left hand side of the screen. Long legs not necessarily more difficult than short legs because you've often got those line features that will take you there. So out past the cliff into the gully, tier of rock. Run round the tier of rock, keep it on my right hand side, and then jump over to the open area and tier of rock and run above that. So there's a little glance there, just checking on the tier. And we took the paths off the map as well, so that's why that path isn't there. So following the tier right. There's some options. Maybe I could have run a bit straighter, gone under the tier of rock that's coming up, but I thought that this was safer. Might have been slower, but I thought it was safer. It minimised my exposure to potential mistakes. So if I'd gone straight off that first tier, could have ended up further down the hill and a bit more uncertain. So that's why I did what I did. Got up here into the open. Was a little bit uncertain if the open was going to be perfectly right, so checked a little bit on the left hand side looking for those tiers. And then coming along, and then sort of we're coming towards the end of the line, unfortunately, and I didn't really have a very, very clear idea of what the next line should have been. But I knew sort of same height, but I maybe wasn't quite as confident in staying at the same height as I should have been. So you see you'll see me sort of slow down and my head will move left and right more, which is gathering information, but it shows that I'm uncertain. So I was very, very sure where I'd left the line though, and that's what allowed me to keep going rather than having to stop. You see that sort of scanning thing we've got going on there. Just checking on features. Trying to run at the same height still, but still not running quite as fast as we were back in that open bit. There we go. Peered onto some features, spotted them, checked the map, worked out what they were, and then navigating into the control using them, realizing that they're on the same height that I needed to get onto the next boulder. There it is. And that boulder will take me up onto the control. There we go. Right. We'll flick over onto 15. Yeah, okay, that's brilliant. Climbing up. Keep going in the same direction I've come in. And I was climbing onto this grey cliff that we're going to come up to. And I realised from that grey cliff that I've got one more contour line above to go to. Here it is. And it's on the end of the rock stuff. So glance to the right because I know there are two boulders below it. And then round the right hand side of this sort of scrubby rocky area. Pick it up, in, get the feature. And now we've got the similar example we had into 10, except this time I do follow the feature around. Follow the tier of rocks, top of the hill, keep it all on my left hand side. Running to basically where the tier ends, and you've got those three rocks together. Come round and into the control. So there's no reason to make a mistake on this part of it because I'm following that line feature. It's almost like running on a path. You're not going to run off the path or the track. You shouldn't really ever run off a line like this. The only reason you might run off it is if you've not realised it's a line that you're following. Just fixing the head cam. And then got a little bit of uncertainty coming into the control. As it didn't quite appear exactly how I thought it should. But I had that confidence. I've been on the line, I've come to those three boulders, and I've come across at the same height. And therefore, no, it does have to be this, even if it doesn't look quite how I thought it should. There we go, got that one. So pressing on, using the feature that I used to come in on, those three boulders, just running back to that. And then you see me take quite a detour left. I thought that the stony ground and the light green would be pretty slow to get through. So I followed the rocks down till I was below it and then I ran along. There we are, beautiful Mt Korong. Looking out over Australia. Wedderburn. So see, this is that little bit of scrubby bit. I would have felt nervous trying to run straight at the control. Could have ended up on either side of it, so I took the safe option. Then you just got to keep that on your right and run along until you find a cliff. Go. Got it. Keep going in the same direction. Keep it all on our right. Looking up for sort of the patch of detail. And then picking the boulder out. So I've got that, and now I guess a harder leg at the end, downhill diagonal leg, end of the course, so you're feeling tired, but I was feeling confident in my orienteering, and dropping through the first tier of rock, running in the open for a bit, onto the next tier, just navigating between those the little patches of green. So it looks like I'm running very, very straight, and I am, but I'm using the features there to help me. You'll see that there are patches of grey as well. I identify them quite easily in the terrain. So get on that patch of grey and I know that it's the boulder at the end of it. Or two boulders. Get them, one more control, out around that, around the green. Trying to keep trying to keep the speed up, staying where it's visible and quick, and running down into control. It's actually, and then crossing the creek. Bit uncertain about where the creek was. Yep. Right. Let's go back onto quick route. There we go. So yeah, that was my orienteering. Hope you've learnt some things by watching it. If you watch it again, you might learn more things or spot little things about it that maybe you do in your own orienteering. There's obviously a lot going on. Can't cover it all in one session, unfortunately. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. We'll do another one of these videos in the near future. So thank you very much.